Coming up on the Dallas Cowboys Report by Chat Sports, we're looking at the latest on Mike McCarthy with, I'm going to call it the insider info, indicating he's going to stay, potentially alongside Dak Prescott, with no new contract extension. And in what will be a lengthy video, I am not going to hold back against the Dallas Cowboys if this does indeed come to fruition. We will have more Cowboys videos for you. We will do cut candidates later this afternoon. So make sure you are subscribed for more free Cowboys updates, news, rumors, and more. Now, the info comes from David Moore of the Dallas Morning News. Now, the most newsy part of this is that Jerry Jones is set to meet with head coach Mike McCarthy on either Thursday or Friday. Part of this hybrid opinion in air quotes piece is that Moore had argued the Cowboys' best path is to simply run it back with head coach Mike McCarthy and quarterback Dak Prescott, because the offense was better and the regular season was great, and you got 1 year left on Dak's deal and Mike's deal, so maybe just give them another chance. And the reason why I put argued in quotes here is, if we can all be blunt and honest with each other, David Moore, Mr. First Question, is the preferred mouthpiece. This is the preferred spin doctor of the Cowboys organization. And there are two paths that are being presented here in terms of how we view that info. Option A, this is the primer before the move. This is the Joneses are going to go down this path. We're going to send this David Moore first, as we so often do, and he's going to put that out there, and then it'll come to fruition. Or it's a leak to potentially gauge the reaction, which is, I think, more of the spin if you want to find a way to keep Mike McCarthy. Let's show what the final two paragraphs, which I think kind of sum up everything in a rather lengthy article from DMN. Quote, Mike McCarthy has 1 year left on his contract. So does Dak Prescott until his contract is addressed. A strong argument can be made that it's in the Cowboys' best interest to give these two 1 more year together before moving on. That starts by letting McCarthy know he'll be back for a 5th season before the week is done. This is kicking the can down the road. This is running it back. This is going, let's see what happens. And it's an awful idea. You know enough about this team. You know enough about your head coach, and you know enough about your quarterback. You have 2 options in front of you. Go be aggressive, make some changes, win now, tear it down, and rebuild. It is time to make a decision. If you don't make a decision, the decision is getting made for you, and it is almost always a bad decision in the end. I've got a lot more we'll get to here on this show, but what do you want to do with Mike McCarthy? FM for fire Mike, KM for keep Mike. It's the pinned comment on today's video. If the ad comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there and please sound off. Again, I think you have 3 options and some paths and options within these. Number 1 option is you go do an aggressive push to win now. Beyond the, we made 2 trades and no free agency, and that was our aggressive path. You need to actually be a little bit more aggressive. And I think part of that aggressive push to win now should be a new head coach. You can at least spin the argument so you keep Mike and go be aggressive, but you need other moves involving your head coach that we'll get to here in a little bit. Option 2 is you blow it up and rebuild. I don't know if Jerry would ever do that given his age. And then the third option is simply run it back. Keep everything the same and hope things are different. And doing nothing is, I would argue, by far your worst possible path from a process standpoint. It's not the worst possible path from a results standpoint, because you are really not even close to being a bad team. You've been a consistent playoff contender as long as your franchise QB has been healthy since you discovered Romo. But since you discovered Romo, the same truth has been true for this Cowboys team. You're just not good enough. And I think there's a great argument. Your defense is a bigger problem right now, and that's fair. But you need change to get to the bar. The bar is not, we made the postseason, yay. That's not good enough. No one watching this show thinks that is good enough for the Dallas Cowboys. Nobody. You cannot do the exact same thing and think, well, this year it'll be different. You've done that for a decade. Even swapping out the quarterback wasn't really getting new things because they're the same damn team. Everyone gets mad at me when I put out the meme of the Romo Cowboys and the Dak Cowboys are the same team. But I have yet to see any evidence saying that I'm wrong on that. So of those three paths, and we'll break down the paths involved for all of them here, which do you prefer? 1, if you want to be ultra aggressive and win now. 2, if you want to rebuild. I think both are valid with where we're at right now. 3, if you agree with the Jones boys, and allegedly agree with them, and you just want to run it back. 1, 2, or 3 in the comments. Here's, I think, your best path of path 1, the push to win now. Emphasis on the phrasing here, new head coach contract. That could be Mike. That could be somebody else. But as we'll get into, again, it's a long video today, you cannot have a lame duck head coach. How are you going to get a good defensive coordinator if you want that kind of changes with a lame duck coach? No one's going to join in on that. You do need to extend Dak Prescott as part of this because that sets you up to build your roster better. And let me tell you, if your goal is to win right now, you are not finding a better quarterback option that also makes you better. You're not finding it. It's just not going to happen. Your plan to trade for AJ McCarthy, it's not going to work. The other option is the rebuild, which we'll get to here. Go add talent in both free agency and trade. You know what your free agency moves were? A long snapper, a running back who didn't make the roster, and your 6th best offensive lineman. That's not getting better in free agency. And then you see if the results are better. And if they are not, then you tear it down. And that is tied into the second path. Blow it up and rebuild. Do whatever you want, head coach. Doesn't matter. You're not trying to win games at this moment, and you can always fire the current head coach 2 years from now if you want to. Option number 2 is you trade away Dak Prescott because it doesn't make sense to keep Dak. And you trade other players too, by the way. You're probably going to shop to Marcus Lawrence, who I still love. Is a great run defender, but doesn't fit your timeline anymore. And you eat the dead money for a year, and you're bad for a year. You suck. You go ahead and you let Trey Lance play, and you see if he's good. If he is, awesome. If he's not, that's fine. Results don't matter in 2024. You bottom out, and in next year's draft, or the year after, if you don't like the quarterback class, then you draft a new quarterback in round 1, because that is your best path in the end. The third option is do nothing. You make no changes. You bring back Mike. You keep Dan, or you promote Joe Witt or whatever. Your quarterback contract status is now in a worse spot moving forward. You still make the playoffs because you're still a good team, and you lose again in the postseason. You know, maybe you lose on the road to NFC South champion or whatever, or you're the 5 seed or you're the 6 seed this time, and you get to go play San Francisco, and they beat the shit out of you again. And then you break our hearts, and we're all sad again because it made the playoffs. The hopes are there a little bit, and you're the same team. But also, you're in an even worse spot now. I'll explain why after a quick word from today's sponsor. That is Prize Picks. They are daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 6 player stat projections, more than, less than, and watch those winnings roll in. I love the flex play, by the way. The flex play keeps your picks in play in the event of you don't get one right. You only got to get 2 out of 3 right. So here's my Packers-Niners, which I honestly don't know if I'm going to watch that game. I don't know if I'm going to be mentally able to do it. I probably will by then. I don't know. Give me more than Brock Purdy passing yards, more than George Kittle receiving yards, and less than Aaron Jones rushing yards. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. I want to emphasize again, I do not believe Mike McCarthy is a terrible coach or he's garbage or the worst ever. I think he's better than Garrett. It's a low bar, though. Here is my question. Do we have faith in Mike McCarthy and this roster and this coaching staff as constructed to get the Dallas Cowboys to where they need to be? Same question for the quarterback, by the way, which we will get into. And my answer is no. We've seen it for 4 years that they can win a bunch of games. They can have it. They keep scoring points on offense. Then they find new ways to blow it every single season. This team's roster and this team's coaching staff must have change. You cannot run it back. That is the literal definition of insanity, is doing the exact same thing and thinking, this year it's going to be different. And I agree with many of you. hey, you got to make some defensive changes here, especially on the coaching staff. I would agree. How are you doing that if you are running it back with Mike McCarthy, who is a lame duck head coach? He's got 1 year left on his deal, and nobody was. What great or even good defensive solution at the coaching staff are you going to get by saying, hey, you're a good defensive mind. Do you want to come be my coach, my defensive coordinator? If we don't make the conference championship game, which is really tough to do anyway, we're all getting fired. How are you selling that? That's not in the cards. So you have to make a decision. You have to go, is this the core we want to go with? Is this the way we want to be constructed? If the answer is yes, then you have to commit to them. Do we want to commit to Mike right now? And that's your actual answer. And I also don't trust the Cowboys to have that thought process. Do you trust the Cowboys right now? Y for yes, N for no. Sound off for me in the comments section. Now, the other part of this article is the more implication as opposed to being outright stated that maybe you just don't do anything with Dak's deal. And this is a really bad idea as well. We would all agree that cap hit cannot stay the same. You cannot field the type of team to be competitive with any quarterback with the cap hit at nearly $60 million. Now, you can restructure it, brings it down to a much more manageable 37. An extension would put it at 33. You can't have the $59 million number. You can't do it. It does not make sense. It's not feasible for this team. Look, Dak Prescott is a top 10 NFL quarterback. We have to acknowledge that as the reality of life in the NFL. You can't name me 10 better. But he is not the freakazoid who's able to override bad support and will his team by himself. Although, they scored 30-something points against the Packers, and maybe we could have had the whole, Trevor Lawrence, fall down game, whatever, come back if the defense did anything. But he's not that guy. He's not that top 3, top 4 quarterback. It's not who he is. You can't pay him $60 million. You can't pay Mahomes $60 million and expect things to go that way. That's why you need change here. You can't just run it back and say this time it'll be different when every year different ways for all the quarterbacks, someone on the supporting cast, somebody's eventually fails you. Not how it works. The restructured number would tentatively rank around 7th. The extended number would rank around 9th. Both of them are a little bit more doable. But the extension number is just kicking that can down the road and hoping this will be different, right? And there are significant 2025 implications here. If you restructure Dak's deal, it leaves you around $58 million in dead money in 2025, and you cannot franchise tag him. So what you are faced with is this. No matter how the season goes, whether you have that fantastic year, I am wrong, which I hope I am, make no mistake about it. You win the damn Super Bowl, everything is all sunshine and roses, you can't even tag Dak. So someone's going to pay him mass money, because even if you don't win, let's say you do the exact same thing this year, fellas, you don't want to be out there. You don't want to be out there searching for a new quarterback unless you're blowing it up. Kirk Cousins is going to get a bunch of money coming off an Achilles tear. There are teams that are desperate for quarterback play that would happily throw money. So someone is going to offer him frankly, what would probably be a record-setting contract, or at least close to it, and more than it would cost you right now to do it. So your hope is, hey, Dak, we kept telling you we didn't want to pay you, and we didn't do it until we had to. Also, you're just going to get constantly bodied by everybody no matter what. Still choose us. We still love you. It's like you're dating your girlfriend, and she keeps saying, hey, we should, let's get married, and go, yeah, sure. And then 5 years in, you bought the ring, and you haven't set a date now. It's 5 years later. It's like, okay, what are we doing here? So that's your hope, that he's still loyal to you, when frankly, you really weren't fully loyal and committed previously. Or he leaves, and you start the rebuild late, and you're exactly where you could have been this offseason, but you kick the can down the road again, and now you have to have another bad season where you're not going to be in quarterback draft range, and all you're doing is delaying the inevitable. I don't really want to be out there looking for a QB. It's not a fun spot to be. It's tough. Even to get that top 5 pick, your odds are still worse than 50-50. You're frankly more likely to go back to the Chad Hutchinson era. We as a fan base can't handle losing 5 games in a season. How are we going to handle winning 5 games in a season? And I still think that path is vastly preferable to running it back. I would much rather blow it all up and embrace the tank and embrace the rebuild and say, it'll be different this year. It's not going to work. My preferred path is to fire the head coach and then see who you hire and go from there. But I would rather rebuild and tear it all down to the studs than say, you know what, let's run it back. This time it'll be different. Before we go, Jerry Jones needs to listen to Jerry Jones. Can wind back the clock, back to the correct move, by the way, to take Zach Martin over Johnny Manziel. The argument laid out here by Jerry was correct. The person to use it on was not so much. Here's what Jerry Jones said to Stephen Jones. Let me tell you something. You don't get to own the Cowboys. You don't get to do the special things in life by making major decisions going right down the middle. Running it back is going right down the middle. You're not committing to going big and trying to win. You're not committing to tearing it down to the studs. And I hope I am wrong. But if you run it back with Mike and Dak, it will not work.